This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from PeopleForward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self.
Hey everybody, it's Rosie. This is a conversation that you very likely want to have something to take notes with while you're listening to it. You're probably going to want to go back and listen to it more than once. You're probably going to want to have it bookmarked and handy so that you can go back and refer to it, because there is so much richness in this conversation of tangible, subtle, but powerful tweaks you can make right now to level up your effectiveness as a communicator. I had the pleasure of sitting down with the renowned Joel Weldon, who is a Hall of Fame speaker, an executive speaking skills coach. He was one of the co-founders of the National Speakers Association. He is the go-to guy of how do you become a world-class speaker. And for those of you who don't want to be a speaker, it doesn't matter, because we talk about whether you are speaking to a child, and it's a parenting relationship, whether you are speaking to a group of people at a meeting, whether you are communicating via written word because you're creating websites or you create marketing materials. This is all about leveling up your communication in whatever facet you communicate with other people. Joel gave such great shifts, like how we need to eliminate or reduce the me, we, my in our communication and shift more to you and yours. You're going to notice that in the conversation, he demonstrates exactly what he's talking about over and over and over and over. We talk about the ping pong approach of how do you be more effective in your communication. He talks about how to level up how we leverage storytelling and subtle tweaks we can make to make them even more powerful. We talk about how to shift how you go about emails, to how you go about websites, to how you go about one-on-ones, to those of you who want to be on a stage or on a stage, how you level that up. And you're going to want to listen for the 22 words that really sum up everything that we talked about. There's just tons in this conversation that I'm already applying. There's tons more that I want to do to make me more effective. So definitely you're going to get a lot out of this. And I will say that if you want to go a step further and level up your effectiveness and find that you've got some underlying head trash or scripts that are getting in your way, make sure that you register for one of our upcoming programs, Courageous Leadership Program. Check out salveopartners.com. You can buy our books. We coach leaders. We help you get out of your own way. Joel brings the skills and the tactics to level you up to the next level. Take a listen. I just have to say that I am really excited personally for you to be here, and I'm very excited for our audience, because I feel like every time I have any interaction with you, I find new ways that I can be better. And people, I'm just going to tell you right now, if you're listening and you are not a professional speaker, it doesn't matter. There is something for you in this conversation, because we all have to talk to people. We all have to influence. And so I'm just going to put it there. But Joe, thank you for bringing your wisdom and insights to me and to our listeners.
Well, it's great to be here, Rosie.
All right. So obviously you are like the guru of speakers. You've coached a bunch of them, helped found the National Speakers Association, and you are just full of wisdom. And I want to just start out with, regardless of how people are communicating, us on this podcast, someone in a meeting, someone on a Zoom meeting, in front of an audience, from your experience, what makes a great communicator? What should we be thinking about?
Well, that's a wonderful question. So as you're listening, think about what she said. This is not about being a professional speaker. That just happens to be what I was. Communicating is something that we do all the time. And no matter what your career move is now or what your leadership role is, you're speaking all the time. So what makes a great communicator or speaker or presentation? In my experience, it's one word: results. What happens? And this week, I just happened to stumble across PBS special on the American Revolution. And It's amazing. I had no idea all the things that happened with Washington and how many years it went on. But a number of times throughout it, where the troops were going to leave, they had no money, they were freezing, they had no equipment, they were losing the battles. And Washington spoke. And they wanted to leave and go back home. And after he spoke, they stayed. That's a result. So whatever he said at that moment to get them not to leave worked. And that's what you need to think of. When you're speaking, what is the result you want? If you're speaking to your children and you want them to clean their room and you talk about that, and the next day it's spotless, you got great results. If you're talking to your team members about better customer service or even better at doing certain things, and you see it immediately done, you got great results. However, the flip side works as well, that many times we don't see anything happening, which means it wasn't a good presentation. So that's the test I use. What is the result? Is it working? Then what you're doing is right. If you're not getting the results you want, then you need to make some improvements. Does that make sense, Rosie?
It makes complete sense, and it's so simple, yet I think how often, I'm just going to take meetings, for example, because they're not run well a lot of times, and that's a whole other conversation we could have. But I think we go into some of these situations not really being clear for ourselves of what is the result that we are wanting. Like, are we wanting to influence? Are we wanting to inspire? Are we wanting to get a decision made? Are we wanting people to take action on something specific? We just kind of talk at people, and I don't know that we have all the time clear purpose or intention behind it. So, and I'm even thinking myself, like sometimes when I am doing a presentation, like I'll ask the conference organizer all the time, like, what does a home run look like? And what are you wanting to get out of this? But you get done and it's like, well, you have to check in with them, or you get the survey results and find out, did it accomplish what they wanted? But sometimes I don't necessarily think about, like, I'm like, am I meeting their goals? But I also don't think, like, what is the result that I want? Like, is it, you want someone to say something to you afterwards, like, wow, that moved me, or wow, I'm going to take action on this. Or I think that sometimes we just are busy, but we're not thinking about what is that result that we want to have? What is that action we're hoping people will take? Is that fair?
Absolutely. So as you're listening, let's make sure it's very clear what the result is. The call to action is going to be for you as you're listening. Be an even better speaker and communicator. Pick up a couple of little tweaks in this podcast that you will put into action immediately. And that'll make this a great investment for you, because that's why you're here. You're not here to hear anything about me except what's going to help you be an even better communicator. So that's the goal. Pick up one little tweak.
100%. Well, and so speaking of tweaks, one of the things that I've learned from you that we've already put into practice in our business several times, and sometimes we're slow learners. I'm like, oh yeah, we could be better at this because we're a human. But you talk about the what's in it for me and really speaking to you, and you're even doing that here with the audience. And so say more about that. I mean, I'm going to tell you what we've done to implement it, because I think people can use it for themselves.
Okay. Well, this is a podcast, and normally a podcast is a conversation between two people. In this case, Rosie and Joel. I don't see it at all. Actually, I'm not even talking to Rosie. Rosie is asking the questions, but you're the audience. As you're listening to this, everything is directed at you. We could have this conversation without you. Then it would be about just the two of us. But it's really for you as the listener. And what if you had that mindset that whenever you're speaking, clearly define who are you talking to? If you're having a team meeting and you're the leader of your company and you're kicking off a new month and laying out the monthly goals or a quarterly goal or an end of the year or beginning of the year meeting, who are you talking to? So I'll give you one example. One of my clients was doing they're a very successful company, and they were talking about what a great year they had, and they wanted to end the year on a high. And he was going over his presentation, and he said, I want to get into the stock price because, this has been a fantastic year. The stock is really doing great, and I want to really brag about that. I said, what percentage of the people on your team listening to you have stock? Oh, he said, only the officers. I said, then why would you talk about the stock price to your team members? Because it doesn't mean anything to them. And this is the idea that you need to have. Who are you talking to? And making sure that it's relevant to them. And as you're listening, notice this one tweak that you can make. Even though there are a lot of people listening to this right now, everything I'm going to use in relation to you as the listener is singular, no plurals. I'm not saying, well, many of you listening today, or some of you out there might have had, or maybe, you're part of this big group that's got this, but those are all plurals. So everything should be you. Even if you're in a live audience, you can include everybody in the singular you. As an example, if I'm talking about a book, now this is a great book. Maybe you've read it, or maybe you never even heard about this book. Okay, that just included everybody. You might be new to leadership, or maybe you've had decades of experience leading people. Wherever you are on that timeline, that's singular. And that really connects you to the people you're talking to. So think of that little tweak, is make it singular and make it about them. And how do most people begin meetings? When you have a meeting or a speaker and they says, I'm so happy to be here, or I'm just so honored to be invited. No one cares. And just think about that. I just love this quote. This is my favorite quote. No one cares. But what if you changed all that and said, here's a quote you might really fall in love with, or here's a quote really worth writing down. If you get yourself out of the way, the only one left is them. So it's not about you. And that's one of the basic premises of our ultimate speaking system. And there's 3 premises. Number 1, communicating and speaking is a learned skill. When you were born, you didn't know how to speak. And if you were born in America, you learned English. If you were born in Japan, you learned Japanese. If you were born in France, you learned French. You learn these things. Speaking effectively and communicating effectively is a learned skill. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. Number 2, be yourself. Being an effective leader is being congruent to who you are. Being the same that people can expect your behavior to be very predictable, because that's who you are. And speaking effectively is not acting. It's not putting on an act and becoming a performer. It's being who you are. And third, it's all about your audience. It's not about you. So that's why I said, I'm not really talking to Rosie. I'm talking to you as you're listening. And as you're listening, you might be in your car. Maybe you're at home. You might be in your office. You might be working out. Now, notice that's still all singular. I didn't say some of you might be working out. Many of you might be driving. Once you put the plural in, then in your brain, well, he's not talking to me. He's talking to all of those other people.
Everybody else needs this, not me. Or something. Yeah.
Well, since you love stories in your teaching, Rosie, and as you're listening, stories are a great tool. I learned this in 1981, years ago, just happened to be channel hopping, and they were showing a man named Arthur Godfrey. He was the #1 radio talk show host in the morning from the 1930s through the 1950s. And then in the 1950s, television started to take over. And radio shows were not popular in the morning because people could watch television. And he went to television. Now, when he was on radio, he was the #1 talk show host in America in the morning. When he went to television, he became the #1 television talk show host in the morning. Nobody had ever done that before. Completely different type of tool to communicate with, visually or just voice-wise. And he was so effective. And in this interview, when he retired in the early 80s, the interviewer said, Arthur, how is it possible that you could be so effective in radio? And you must have a secret. And then he said these words. He said, I do have a secret. And my secret is I talk to just one person, and their name is you. You might have gotten up this morning and felt great, or maybe you didn't feel too good today, or maybe you've already had your breakfast, or maybe you're already in your office. And I only visualize not millions of people out there, just one, and their name is you. So take that Arthur Godfrey technique and use that in your communication skills. That's a tweak.
I love that tweak on so many levels. And I will say that everything you're saying makes so much sense because we do want to see ourselves in what people are saying. And this is where, artists who are really skilled at songwriting, for example, people say, well, I see myself, it resonates for me. Or when I think about people talking about who are the great speakers that they love listening to, they feel a connection to them. I always talk about connection versus performance. Are you connecting with people? Do they see themselves in you? Do they think, oh, it's all about me, the presenter, me monster versus you? And thinking about a leader with a team. You have leaders of the team that are up there to perform. They're not being their authentic self. They're putting on a role. And people have a pretty good BS meter and can see through it. And so if we're not connecting with people on an authentic level, if we're not saying, hey, I see you, because there is such a void right now of people actually feeling seen and feeling heard and feeling valued. So when someone does that and makes that tweak, I will just say it's really powerful. It's so small, but it's so powerful. Why do you think that it's so hard for people to make that shift?
Well, I is the most used word in the English language. And as you're listening, here's a good assignment. Look at an email to a client or a team member, a business email. Look at your first 2 paragraphs. Print it out and take a look at that email and circle how many times you said I, me, or mine, and how many times you said you, your, and you'll. We just get in the habit because we're all self-directed. You're listening to this podcast because you want to get something out of it. And if you're not getting something out of it, you're going to leave this podcast. But you have a self-interest. Maybe this guy knows something. Maybe Rosie can give me one of those, a sparkle to make my whole day. Add a little sparkle to your day. You use those 7 words all the time. So maybe you'll get a little sparkle to make your day even better. But that's why you're here. And the same thing when you're communicating, that's what your listeners want to know.
I totally forgot about the email thing because a couple of years ago, it was at YCon where we were introduced to you. And I remember that Gary Sanchez had us do an exercise. He said, pull up your phone, pull up your laptop, look at your email. And I started going, oh my God. I was like, oh, it is like, you don't think about it. So from that, I have to tell you, so this was 3 years ago, I think. I came home and I said to my team, we have to start shifting our communication out to like our consultant community, our communication out. And so when I get emails now that start with, I hope you're having a great day, I start cringing. And I totally forgot that that was from you because with my coaching clients, it is always you. It's hi, and it's not, I hope you're doing well. It was so great seeing you today. Great seeing this. Attaches this for you. Like, it's not, I'm attaching this for you. Like, I've shifted my entire email language and I forgot. So everyone listening, I'm telling you, taking Joel's cue, do this exercise because you might have a bit of a cringe factor as you see how pervasive the I, me is. It's harder than you think to take it out, but it is really transformative when you do.
Well, let's just see what you said. I hope you're having a great day, a nice day. Okay, just take out the I. Hope you're having a great day. Okay, same exact meaning. So one simple way to eliminate the I, me, and mine is just take them out. Now, in some cases, it wouldn't make sense. So let's just say Rosie does podcasts. She has all kinds of guests. So somebody is writing her and they're going to be a guest, let's say next month. And they send her an email, something like this. I'm so excited to be on your podcast next month, and I have a bunch of questions, and I want to make sure that I deliver real value to the podcast. So I made a list below, and it would be really helpful for me if you could answer these for me. Now, is there anything terrible about that? No. They're looking for information. They're telling Rosie what the questions are. That's how most people speak. However, when you master the idea of making it about them, think of the difference that it conveys. So let me just mentally rewrite that. Rosie, your upcoming podcast is going to be so good, especially when the message that you want me, you got to have a couple of these in there, to deliver to your team or your listeners. Here are a few questions, if you could answer, would guarantee that your listeners are going to get even more out of this program than if we just didn't have a plan. So if you would look at your email and then see if you could rewrite just that first paragraph. And remember, there's nothing wrong with saying I, me, or mine. What is not effective is making it all I, me, and mine. And another way to think about it, and Rosie, you answered the question, have you ever played ping pong?
I think a long time ago I played ping pong.
Okay, so
Yep.
Which side of the net does the ball go on? If I hit the ball to you, where does it go next?
To me.
And then when it comes to you, where's it going to go next?
You.
Oh, and then where's it going to go next?
Me.
Okay.
Oh, I get it. Me, you, me.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's another way to think about it. So if you're telling a personal story, so somebody's telling a story. When I was a child, I had a traumatic experience. My best friend, Sheila, told me I was ugly. Okay. That's an I message. But what if you started saying something like this? Think back when you were a kid. Did you ever have anybody that said something that hurt you? I can remember when Sheila, my best friend, said to me that I was ugly. If that happened to you, how would you have felt? What would have been going through your mind? Well, I can tell you how I felt, even though that was many years ago. I felt terrible. And I imagine if you've had an experience like that, you might even still feel terrible about her. So that's the ping pong idea. I, you. I had this happen. If that happened to you, what would you have done? I felt terrible. If that had happened to you, how would you have felt? It's a conversation. Another way of thinking about it is if somebody's in your living room, sitting on the couch next to you talking, and you have a conversation, you wouldn't go, I, me, because you're talking to somebody right there in front of you. You would do something to engage them in that. Don't beat yourself up for saying I, me, or mine. It's okay. Just don't make it all in that direction. Think about the ping pong. I, you. I, you. Me, them.
I love the ping pong analogy because you can get to a point where you think, oh, I can't ever do that. And what's coming up for me as I'm listening to that ping pong analogy is that's human connection, right? Human connection isn't all one-sided. And so whether it is an email, whether it is a conversation, that ping pong of you, me is like, we're in this together. It's that connection piece is what is coming up for me as I think about that. Because when you think about people telling stories, we see ourselves in other people's stories, even if they're not our experience. So there's something to be said about sharing stories of our experiences that model vulnerability and authenticity and help people see our humanness because they connect to us. But the purpose of telling a story is not to be self-serving. The purpose of telling a story is to further the message or the work or the result. So like even when I'm speaking and telling a story, then it turns into you've probably had something similar, or if this resonates, you're normal because here's what we've learned from our data. So it's the bringing them into it. But yeah, when you have someone that's just it's like, oh my God, they're such a me monster. And people start tuning out.
Well, since we're talking about little tweaks for your listeners, You're just talking again about the importance of stories and how people relate to that. So there's two ways to tell a story and two different schools of thought. There's one school of thought where you just start the story. So there I was in Yosemite, surrounded by this burnt out tragedy of a forest fire. And I had driven all those miles to get there. And it was just so frustrating. It was disheartening to see all this loss. Now, if somebody just came up at a meeting and started talking like that, two things are going to happen. Either you start thinking about, yeah, Yosemite, I probably should go there, and you're kind of into the story. Or you're thinking, what does that have to do with me? So here's a tweak to add to your speaking skill. Don't tell a story until you give the point of the story. You know, we've been talking about a lot of things, Rosie, and sometimes people go through difficult times in their life. You know, here's a story that might be helpful for your listeners. If they are going through a difficult time in their life, what they can do to turn it around. So just imagine you're standing in Yosemite. And as you're listening, you're not there in your car or your home or your office. You're in Yosemite and you look around and you see all this burnt out, what's left of a beautiful forest. And you feel terrible. And then you look down and you see a little green bud popping out of the soil, just a little bit. And you realize that's someday going to grow into something bigger. And, you know, that's the same thing in your life. Okay, now that's basically the same story, but two things happen. Number one, I told you the purpose of the story before I told you the story. Second thing is, who was in Yosemite?
You.
You were. You don't care about me. And that's what you need to think of. No one cares. No one cares unless it's relevant to them. And by telling you that story that way, then I can say, it was March 16th, 2004, the day I stood in Yosemite looking at that burned out part of the forest and saw that little green shoot. And it reminded me that some of those difficult times in our life are like the forest fire. Everything looks over. But then there's that little bit of hope that pops up. And that's what you need to think of. There's a little green bud about to start in your life. Okay, I'm just making that up. But once you have that skill down, replacing as many I, me, and mines with you and yours, making it about them, giving the point of the story that if maybe you're going through a difficult time in your life, this might be helpful. Not that you give away the punchline of the story, but you give away the premise of the story because people are busy today. And then we all have these wonderful smartphones to distract us. And if you're at a meeting, people pick them up, they start texting, they look at their emails, and they're out of your message. So you want to add a little sparkle to your day? Those 7 words? Put them in the stories. Tell them the point. Make it about them.
What's so interesting is, although this is an illustration, you know, when you start saying, oh, then I was there, now I'm actually like, I want to hear what your experience was. Where the first time you're like, whatever, you were in Yosemite, I don't care. But because you did that tweak and you're like, I was standing there too, because there's that relatability, like, oh, now I want to hear what his experience was. So it was just fascinating, even though this was like a exercise. I'm like, oh, I actually want to listen now. I didn't want to listen before.
Well, I haven't never been to Yosemite, so I don't know. And I've never been in a forest fire either. And maybe you haven't as you're listening. Okay, so I used I there twice. And then I said, maybe you haven't either. Ping pong. Yeah. Start forming that habit as you're listening of going back and forth. And eventually you're going to find it's much more about other people than it is yourself.
The other thing that is coming up for me that we've also implemented. So you talk about the email. I will say that for you listening, if you have sales responsibilities, please listen up, because when I get any kind of email or LinkedIn outreach, and I feel like I get a gajillion a week that are, I do this and I was looking at your website and I saw this, and I am just like, piss off. Like I send them all to spam and I'm like, go away. And it's very rare that I listen to cold outreach anymore anyway, because you don't know if it's spam. I go through relationships, but it'll be, your work on this is fascinating. Like this really stood out. You're doing this. And it's funny because I'm like, oh, the ones that I actually don't immediately send to spam, or I don't have a visceral reaction where I want to tell that salesperson to go take a flying leap, are the ones where they actually seem like they've taken the time to know at least a little bit about who I am. And at least I'm not an immediate no. So if you're listening and you have any sales or marketing responsibilities, think about that. And we took this as a business. When Joel and I met to prep for this session, I immediately said, oh my gosh, Lisa, we have to redo this page on our website. Because most websites, people want to know who you are as a company, but they want to see you in it, and they want to know what's in it for me. What problems are you solving? How can you help me? And so we took that lens, and we still have more work to do on our website, but on our homepage, and we have like a new coaching webpage, we completely flipped the script and did, you're looking for this, you want to be a future ready leader, you want to level up, we can help. And then even in describing our services, it's, here's what the experience is like for you. Here's like a testimonial, how we can help. So we did a little bit more of that ping pong. And when we got done, we both like clapped and said, oh, it's so much better. It's so much more aligned with who we want to be. And it just, so for you listening, look at your website if you have a website. Look at your sales materials. Look at your marketing materials. Look at your flyers if you're promoting a program. Does it speak to the you, or is it all about me, 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 me? Because I will tell you firsthand of implementing these, maybe not consistently, starting with the email thing, it has just been an eye-opener and a game changer. So I want to say thank you to you, Joel, because I'm like, holy crap.
Well, as you're listening to this, you need to establish credibility. There's certain things when somebody says, what do? You have to talk about yourself to give answers to the questions, and don't get hung up. Again, I told you that before. Don't get hung up about saying I, me, or mine, but think of ways that you could do it where it's of benefit to them. Because let me say again, no one cares about you, pause, unless what you have said or done or experienced is of value to me. So when people ask me, when you coach people in being better speakers, how did you learn all of that? What do you say? Well, I just was born that way. Well, that's not true. I mean, imagine if you couldn't lead your Sunday school class in silent prayer. I mean, that's how shy you were. Well, that's who I was. Never spoke in high school, never stood up in front of a group till I was 28 years old. And then somebody in the room said I was the worst speaker they'd ever heard, and joined Toastmasters. And 5 years later was in the world finals and placed in the top 3 in the world. How does that happen? Because speaking is a learned skill. And no matter where you are in your speaking skills, you can improve them. And it just takes time, effort, and energy if you're really interested in doing that. And then when it comes to coaching people, some people can do and some people can teach. What if you could do both of them? So when somebody asks me, well, I've been paid to speak at over 3,000 events around the world, and I've coached over 10,000 speakers. That's all they need to know. They don't need to know, this is my passion, or I love doing this, or I'm never going to retire. No one cares. But if you're looking for somebody who can do something and knows what you can do with it, maybe this guy can help me. And you need to do the same thing. Think about what in your background gives you great credibility. If you're a dentist specializing in root canals and somebody comes to you and says, I got a terrible problem, doc, can you help me? Well, it's a special week. We just celebrated our 25,000th root canal here in the office. And I think I can help you. Oh, well, if he's done 25,000, I guess he can help me. Rather than thinking, is this his first day as a dentist? So what in your background would immediately give you credibility to accomplish the things that you want to have happen with the people that you're talking to? Does that make sense, Rosie?
It makes complete sense. And I appreciate that, because you're right. If you're sitting here thinking, whether it's a product or a service for your home, for your business, It is, how can this firm, this company, this product, this service help me? And I want to make sure I'm making a good investment. So you want to know the credibility. When we are talking to clients, it's, oh, we've put thousands of leaders through this coaching program and these are the results. Okay, it's not like you're dabbling in this, you've been a coach for a year. Like, no, I actually am on faculty and train other coaches in this particular methodology out of Harvard. Oh, okay, you get credibility. And then you go back to, so here's how it can help you. Here's the things that you might be looking for. So it makes complete sense. I love that. In your coaching 10,000 speakers and doing more than 3,000 speeches yourself, what has been your biggest lesson learned in terms of your own growth?
Well, it's funny. I just reached for these cards because I was thinking I better add this. And that's the answer to the question. It's this little card. And this is a feedback card. And it says evaluation of Joel Weldon's presentation. And for 51 years, over 3,000 events, everybody in my audience critiques me on a 1 to 10 scale. And there are 3 questions on this little feedback card. So if we were doing a meeting, a live meeting, and you were the host, I would say something like this. If we were going to talk for an hour, this would be like at 55 minutes, maybe. Not at the very end, but near the end. Well, Rosie does these meetings all the time and brings in speakers, and it's so important to get feedback, especially on today's. So everybody's got a little green card in front of you. Don't put your name on the card. And the first question is, on a 1 to 10 scale, how valuable were the ideas that you heard? Circle a number from 1 to 10. Number 2, how effective was Joel's presentation of these ideas? 1, it was totally boring. 10, this was great. Third question, compared to every other speaker you have ever heard in your life on this subject, how effective was today? 1, it was rotten. 10, the best. Now, below that are 3 other open-ended questions. Just in a couple of words, because Rosie will know what these are. What was your one best takeaway? What was the one idea you heard that was most helpful? Next question. What was one thing that could have been improved to make today even better for you? And the last question is, what did you like best about the presentation? So there are 6 questions on this card, and it takes a very short period of time. And then I'm walking around the room making sure people are filling it out. And usually would get about 95%, not everybody, but a big majority. Now, Rosie would normally do, if this was a live event, a post-evaluation with an email, and she'd get 20% back. But what nobody knows in the audience is that's how I got paid. Every event I spoke at, my fee was guaranteed. So Rosie, when I was hired by her, I told her that anything under a 7 on those 3 questions, you don't pay for. And that was my guarantee. Nobody knew who I was. I didn't have any credentials. I got results because I knew what the numbers would be, but that was the key to my entire career, that we never worked with booking agents. We never advertised. We didn't have a demo video. We didn't have a sales sheet. We just waited for the phone to ring. And 2 things happened. Once a client hired me, they'd hire me again, or they'd refer me. How about your business? Are people hiring you again because what you did was so good? Or are they referring you to people because you were so good? And that lasted 51 years. So if you had, what was the best thing? It was getting feedback. Now you can do the same thing. Now we use a digital card, and Google has a great one, and Talkadot has another one where you can do it and you don't get any names, but you get feedback. So it would be very helpful for you if you're doing a team meeting. Just have a blank index card and just say, hey, before we break, put a number from 1 to 10. How valuable was this meeting to you? What'd you like best? What can I do to improve next month's meeting? And see what you get. And if you've been to Toastmasters, you know feedback is the key to improvement. And that's where I learned that when I first joined in 1969. And I'm still an active member, even though that's 57 years ago. I'm a slow learner. How about you? Are you improving? So that's an idea to think of. Next time you speak, just ask for 3 things. 1 to 10, how valuable? What'd you like best? Or your best takeaway? What could have been improved? And everything I've learned about speaking has come from those green cards. Because if you keep doing what they like and stop doing what they don't like, you're going to get great results.
So many people are afraid of feedback, or they dwell on the ones that aren't where they want them to be, but that's how you grow. And I love that you gave the example of team meeting, because that's exactly what popped in my head. I was like, how often do leaders neglect, and maybe it's not every single meeting, but if you do a monthly staff meeting, which we could have a whole conversation of whether those are effective, or you do your quarterly offsites, or whatever it might be, of, hey, let's just do a quick 1 to 10. How was this meeting, and what could have been improved? Or if it wasn't a 10, what would make it a 10 next time? And getting in that feedback loop, feedback culture, I think you're not even just from a meeting standpoint. What popped in my head too is, oh God, you could even like family vacation, or if you have something like family night, and say, okay, everybody, 1 to 10, how was vacation? And I actually did that with my son when we ended up taking spring break together. My husband had to bow out because he had to take care of his mom. And I asked him, I said, okay, scale of 1 to 10, would you give this vacation? And why? And then I said, what would make it a 10 next time? And I'll ask him that about swim practice, like scale of 1 to 10, how was practice, or how'd you feel about your meet? And then, great, why'd you give it that? What would make it a 10 next time? And so I didn't even realize I was doing that, but I think that there's so many other places that we can use that to, again, connect with people, as well as to get feedback to better ourselves or create a better experience. But I think it also fosters connection in a way, because a lot of times we don't ask for feedback. We're not asked for our opinion.
Well, one other reason to do it is you're the only one that doesn't know. If you do a team meeting, you got 10 people in the room, those 10 people know if it was a good meeting or a bad meeting. If you don't get feedback, you're the only one that doesn't know. And 3 times over the 50 some odd years that I've been a professional speaker and an original founder of the National Speakers Association, from the main stage at the big annual convention, I've shared that idea. And I can't tell you how many fellow Hall of Fame speakers have come up to me and say, what right do they have to critique me? I'm a professional speaker. I know what's good or not. That would be like a restaurateur saying, what do I care about the people coming to eat dinner here? I know what makes a great dinner. I'm a chef.
Well, what's funny is we actually tried out a fairly new restaurant that's been around less than a year. And all these people were like, we've heard about it. Hey, so my husband and I checked it out, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And it was really funny because we sat up at the bar and the drinks were okay. The food was kind of like, I was like it was a pizza, and it was like Neapolitan style, but it was like the dough didn't seem right. And the chef comes out and he was like, great, huh? And he's like, it's the best gluten-free crust you've ever had, right? And I was like, what am I going to say in front of the restaurant? No, it freaking sucks. But I was like, thumbs up. And we looked at each other, and then someone else was complaining, and then they were like, well, that's just how it is. And then we started reading the Yelp reviews, which we should have done before we went there. And it was, the chef came out and got mad and was like, they don't understand our cuisine. This is, and like, he's getting mad at the people who are critiquing, saying they don't understand. They're like, I'm pretty sure I understand if dough is not cooked.
Yeah, he had no interest in knowing. Well, when people go to a meeting, the speakers say, well, people come up and tell me it was great. Or they tell me that everybody comes up. Well, no, not everybody. Well, that's what you want. You want to know the quiet ones that don't want to say anything. Or the restaurant, the nice people that don't want to complain. They just say, we're never coming back again. And if that chef or the cook had known that and said, well, I'm so sorry you didn't like it, let me comp the dinner and come back and give me a second chance. I wanted to leave you, as you're listening, with 22 words, little tweaky words that maybe will help you be an even better communicator and speaker. So here they are. If I was to summarize everything it's taken half a century to learn about how to be an effective speaker and communicator, here's 22 words. Speak to your audience about what they need in an organized way they can follow, and get yourself out of the way.
Love it. Oh my gosh, it's so wise.
Now the legendary follow-up Dr. Rosie questions for a podcast guest. Having listened to your podcast, Ask away.
All right, everyone looks forward to this. So, one of the things that I have learned in my career and my life is that it is part of our human DNA to get in our own way and tell ourselves stories that keep us safe and small. And I know, Joel, that you have done a lot of work on yourself and you've been on this earth for 84 years. And so perhaps this isn't an issue anymore. But for people, you who are listening, you're human, you have these scripts. And so it's helpful to hear from these wise sage guests that I have that they are human or have been human. And so, Joel, I know that you've kind of worked beyond this in your life, but I would love it if you would still share with the listeners, what is a self-limiting story that maybe used to hijack you, and how did you move beyond it so that you can show up as a leader and have the impact you want to be having in your life?
Well, that's a great question. I think everybody has. And I think the biggest thing on a personal level as a young person was just the lack of confidence and thinking I wasn't good at anything. And I didn't have very many experiences. But as an example, I caddied at a country club for rich people from the time I was 14 through 19. And maybe when you were young, you had an experience where you worked for somebody else. Well, in this case, they were wealthy people. They contributed to a caddy fund. And in 1959, when I graduated high school, Pepe, the caddy master at the Inwood Country Club on Long Island, New York, said, Joel, you just won the caddy scholarship for the year. I said, what's that? Well, I didn't know anything about it. He said, we're going to pay 4 years of college education for you. Get into a college, and the country club, they contribute every time they play 18 holes. Money goes to a caddy fund. We pick a caddy. You won this year. You're going to get a 4-year college education. We're going to pay for everything. And I turned it down because I didn't think I was smart enough to go to college. I graduated in the bottom quarter of my high school class. So I didn't think I had intelligence enough to go to college and became a carpenter working with my hands. But it was such a great blessing to realize that people don't have confidence in the beginning. And it's helped me so much in working with people in speaking, because speaking wasn't something I did. I wasn't high school valedictorian. And maybe you've had that same experience as you're listening, that in the beginning, you didn't start off very good. And the harder the times, it made you better, not weaker, but stronger. And I'm very grateful for those experiences because it gives you a lot of patience when people don't pick things up easily, because it didn't happen to me easily. So I think that's one of the things, that lack of confidence, because a lack of results. I hadn't done anything. When I started doing things, the confidence came. When those green cards kept coming back, getting higher and higher and higher, then I knew that I was making a difference.
I appreciate you sharing, because my guess is for you who are listening, you're thinking, holy cannoli, this is like the well-known Joel Weldon. You know, he has all these experience, like he's uber confident. No one starts out confident. So thank you for that. And thank you for humanizing your gifts. So are you ready for quick questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Fill in the blank. Living authentically is
Being yourself.
when the world is presenting an opening, but you don't feel like showing up as a leader. What do you do?
Leave.
I love it. Oh my God, I love that. Bye. Peace out. What is something people would be surprised to know about you?
I record everything in books of lists and document things. How many days water skiing, how many days houseboating, how much I weigh every day. I track numbers.
Anyone is familiar with the YOS discovery, you're a Y of right way. So, oh my God. And that's my number 9. That makes my head hurt, but I love it for you. Okay. I was like, oh, okay. I love it. What is your favorite go-to movie?
Christmas Vacation.
That's so good. I love that one. What is your go-to song?
I love anything that Elvis did.
What is something that you can't live without?
Well, there's happiness and joy and gratitude.
I love it. So it doesn't have to be a thing. So I absolutely love it. What is something in your ordinary daily life that makes your heart happy?
Gratitude and my family.
Nice. And what are you grateful for right now?
Health, fitness, career, this interview.
I love it. Lots to be grateful for. Lots to. Well, there has been such amazing wisdom from you, and I'm taking away even more of, more tweaks that I'm going to make. I feel like I learn something every time I am in your presence, live or recording. So thank you for that. So in closing, and I have a feeling I know what this is going to be, but I don't care. In closing, Joel, if you could challenge leaders everywhere to practice this one behavior that would create more human workplaces and equip everyone to show up as a leader, what would that be?
Make it about them and not about you.
Mic drop. For those of you listening, thank you for being here. I hope you took some valuable lessons. I hope you're going to listen to this conversation more than once because there's such rich nuggets. I know I will. And Joel, thank you again for being here.
Well, it was a pleasure. And as you're listening, wherever you are, make it a great day.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to PeopleForwardNetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.